Hi, Mike DePung here, and I'm happy that you can be with me here on Spirit Hill. Welcome back if you've viewed any of my videos before. And I want to talk a little bit about healing, personal healing today, and it relates to the topic of grief. And I do have some notes, and I'm going to be reading from them to some extent because I want to make sure that everything is clear as it can be, because this is a very sensitive subject, and I know that it's a real challenge for many of us. Grief can be deep and profound, and it can cause some more severe challenges for us. And sometimes we need extra help. And if you do about anything, then please get that extra help, because I am not a certified mental health professional. I am, however, one who understands who and what we are as human beings, and how that is translated into this specific life, this specific spirit incarnate known as me. So I want us to think about time, first of all, that when we, like I said, when I come as my specific self, I have this little cylinder that is like time. It's a container, a vessel that can be filled with what I fill it with. And yours can be filled with what you fill it with. And I'm going to bring this together with grief in just a minute here. The question is, how do I choose to fill it? What determines the contents that I choose to make it brim, this container that I can just see it as a clear, almost like just a clear, plain, simple vase, cylinder vase that is filled to the very top, and that it's just the surface tension. I don't know if you've ever seen that, where the surface tension of the water or some liquid is there, and it keeps it from going over. It's actually fuller, overfill over the top of the vessel. Well, how do we get to that point? What is it that I fill this time container of me so full that it doesn't spill over, but it's there and it's just ready to burst? And I guess that at some point, when I get to the time when my container is so full that that surface tension finally breaks, that I'll be released from this body. And at that point, I know that it's going to cause some feeling of loss in others. But in a way, there's a sweetness of that my container was so full that now was the time for it to burst. And so sweet death comes. And even though death isn't so sweet to some to think about, if we come to an understanding of who and what we are, then there's some expression of depth, of love and light, of richness that is added to all of this experience that we have here. So to some people, death isn't so sweet. There's always involved in death. There's a loss in one way. There's a loss of some sort. And it frames how full our time container is and how sweet the contents are when death comes. And how does this happen? Well, grief to me is a healing tool. Many seek to avoid grief and ego energy because that's our default energy. And if we don't call on heart, we're going to just experience ego energy responses to life, reactions to life. So when an ego tries to prevent hurt and suffering for us, and it's very good at it, but when we run from grief, when we hide it, when we try to not face it because it hurts, because ego is telling us to do that, it works. We may escape it, but it works in a way that just allows us to exist, as though to breathe were life. It allows us to go on, but not with any sense of thriving. And that's what we want. We want thriving. Grief should be allowed and energized by heart. It should be faced. It should be embraced. Because if we want to heal and add a rich value component to our lives, this real essence of why we came here as spirit incarnate, to understand all of this, to experience all of this, death is part of it. So grief highlights the depth of love, the value of the connection with whoever or whatever we lost. If those connections are heart energized, the grieving process continues to magnify the love and light and the value of the relationship. And as the deep sorrow eases with some passing time, as we're embracing these visions of whoever or whatever it was that was lost, as we realize the value of it, and that fills us, because that's why we came here, to experience our own creation. As that fills us and the sorrow eases, the love and light emerge ever richer and stronger. It produces healing in love and light. If ego has been the source and frame of what we have filled our time container with, then the grief can be unbearable in terms of being irreconcilable. Sometimes ego just won't allow that there can be anything, any other thing, force, dynamic that can be operative, because it again tries to protect us. So if we just allow ego to be that operating system for us, that default operating system, we realize that something that there's some things are just irreconcilable, and we just have to go on with life and trudge through it. But it doesn't have to be that way, because we can realize that the highest self, heart self, the one we came here to live, sense, and experience life with, has been shortchanged if we don't engage heart. And at the very end, when ego has been the operating system primarily, when we haven't awakened to who and what we are, and energized our lives with heart, then we might feel some remorse. We might feel some emptiness. And so we don't want that. And so how can we avoid that? Well, awaken to our hearts. Realize that we are spirit incarnate, and then we can experience loss and death and grief in a new way, an enlightened way. I know I have. I've experienced grief. I've also run from grief through ego energy by filling my time with anything that alleviates the hurt or justifies ego perceived shortcomings. I think, oh, I should have done this. I could have done that. I should have done more with this person before they died, or I should have said this, or any of thousands of things we could come up with. And that's ego reasoning. But as I have come to know and love my true self, my highest self, my heart self, I discovered that grieving promotes healing. The contents of my time container, they please me now. I discovered that there is pause for joy in the relationship that isn't any longer possible, because things have changed. The form has changed. The plane of relationship has changed. And so by acknowledging that there's been this loss, that things have changed, I can mourn while remembering, and I can see a new value, a new way that allows me to continue in healing. I want to share my one experience that I had with this. My friend Steve, who was my spiritual brother and my best friend, he transitioned 2 years ago unexpectedly, and I, along with my cousin, my dear cousin, who was his wife, and many others, felt shock. I felt that sense of denial that it wasn't possible that Steve was gone. But since I've been on this path of awakening for some time, I didn't allow indulgence in this wallowing in unrelenting sorrow. There was more value. And so what did I do? How did I change that? Well, I spoke to Steve. I felt his presence. I almost immediately afterwards, and this is a way, find some way to start grabbing hold of the memories which will help you to solidify what you had in relationship, the relationship that is now changed. I do it by writing. Others might do it by making music or dancing, or they might do it by engaging in work that just allows them to value who they have lost or what they have lost. So this is what I did. I began writing right away. I mean, as soon as I got home from the hospital where Steve had passed, And as I crafted these memories, it wasn't long before my cousin called me and she asked me to do the eulogy for Steve. I knew my spirits had already been helping me because we all have helping and compassionate spirits about us. We access them through heart and we can hear them and know them in different ways. They speak to us. And so I know that my spirits are helping me because I started writing and it was already enriching me, my life, but I still felt sorrow. Don't get me wrong, I wept profusely. Grieving through heart energy doesn't mean that you have some kind of stoic pretension that we can't show what we feel. Just the opposite. I wept at his bedside as Steve drew his last breath. I wept as I wrote and began filling my container with the love and light of our relationship. I wept as I delivered the eulogy. I'm not going to detail all here about that, but I can say that Steve let me know that while I grieve the change in our relationship, we still have one. It's just different now. He appeared to me in a dream. That was one way. And another way is I found something that would connect me with him with the energy that he carried, and that there would be this energetic connection. And so uh, I have one of the 18 guitars that Steve had, and every time I play it, I sense the connection. I know their connection with him. I know that there's this bond that's still there, and it adds value and richness to the relationship, and it just keeps my time container filling more because of the relationship that I had with Steve. And we can do that with all things in our lives that just help us to heal, to reconcile the things that seem impossible or irreconcilable. Heart, calling on heart energy, and having the help of spirits, of compassionate spirits, of these beings that are about us, that want to do this. We can have a really full lifetime container. Um, so the pangs of sorrow, comes to the point where they are no longer greater than the joys of this fuller container, time container of my life. And such a process hasn't been limited to Steve. I've been called to go back to address other grief in other forms, losses that produce sorrow, losses that were not even defined or remembered for decades. And this is what our healing is about when we awaken to heart. I can say once again that healing begins with a definite choice to invoke heart in its operating system. Ego will leave us with sadness and a lesser filled time container, but heart will give us vision to heal by evaluating the reality of being spirit incarnate, and we can respond specifically to each loss and deal with it openly and fully and with all that we are. And it will enrich the relationship that we had with whatever it was that we lost or whoever we lost. We allow it. We seek to nurture the memories, and in doing so, we heal further in love and light. So we feel the depths of love and light, no matter how significant the person, experience, or thing is that we lose. We can do this with everything. And this neighbor of mine that died, his name was Alan. To my neighbors and the family of Alan, I know that we can be blessed in the grief, as Alan's life gives us cause to fill our time containers with the richness and value he gave to each of us who feel his loss through the coming weeks and months, or as long as we wish to heal. So I'm going to leave it with that for now. Grief. Oh, no, you know what? I was undecided, but I just heard, I know. I want to share this. I pulled a card. I asked for a clarifying card, something to just help make this message a little more significant. And here it is from that wonderful mystical shaman oracle deck. Thank you, Chrissy. And I want to just share what this brought to me just a little bit before I started this video. The sun. And the manual talks about the essence of the sun, and here's the part that resonated with me, that spoke to me about the topic that I'm dealing with today. The sun is the most brilliant light for all beings and allows life to sprout from the dark, feminine earth. From things that are dark, and if we look at this in a symbolic way, that we have the ability to create like Earth does. We can identify with that. We are co-creators. We have this allow that there is darkness and depths that are there that can sprout richness rather than just decay. And the richness can come from that. And so let the light of our hearts shine on the losses that we encounter, and cause this great life to sprout up more value. So, leaving you with that now. Healing and love and light. Thank you for being here.